We've talked over the past couple of months about Joe Biden losing support. I talked before about Joe Biden losing support among African-American voters in this country. But now Joe Biden is now not just losing support among the African-American voters, but also Hispanic voters. It turns out that Donald Trump is now beating Joe Biden with the Hispanic community in this country. Go figure. I bet a lot of people didn't expect that to happen. Let's go ahead and get into this story here about Joe Biden's recent polls. And then I'm going to give you a breakdown as to why these particular groups would be feeling some kind of way against Joe Biden. And there's one issue in particular that I think they do have in common. Let's go ahead and get into this clip here from News Nation.
Back now on your Tuesday morning, a new year, but the same problems are persisting for President Trump when it comes to the polls. The latest showing President Biden losing support among some key groups who turned out for him back in 2020.
Yeah, they're tuning out now. Our Alina Shirazi is joining us from Washington, D.C. to break down all the data. Alina, good morning.
Adrienne and Marky, good morning to you. Well, a new poll is sounding the alarm for Democrats as the numbers show President Joe Biden trailing behind former President Donald Trump. The new USA Today Suffolk University poll shows 2024 Republican candidate Donald Trump leading by 3% when it comes to overall support.
Pause right there. See it? So Joe Biden has 34% among Hispanic voters. Donald Trump is now pulled ahead of him with 39%.
When it came to Hispanic voters surveyed, former President Trump also earned 39% compared to Biden's 34%. Biden has also seen a decline with voters under the age of 35 and among Black voters. The president's numbers have decreased from 2020 to 2023 by nearly 25%.
Pause right here. Biden's support among Black voters in 2020, you will see at that point, we're like 80. He had like 87% of the African-American vote is down to like 63% now in 2024. But I want to remind you again, was that really support for Joe Biden in 2020 or was it against Donald Trump, right? Was it like not, I'm going to go against Donald Trump. I'm not necessarily a fan of Joe Biden, but I don't want Donald Trump again. So we're going to support him in 2020. How do you go from 87% support among African-American voters, you're Democrat president, and you drop down to like 63%? I'm going to explain that in a minute.
When it comes to Black voters, we spoke with a Democratic strategist who says if these numbers continue to persist within the African-American community, President Biden won't make it in 2024.
If those numbers persist, the president's not likely to win re-election. And given Donald Trump's legislation, the First Step Act, and his push to really do symbolic gestures in terms of trying to gain support for the African-American community, he's really chipped away at the president's base. And that really poses problems for Democrats.
And the Democratic strategist we spoke with does say representation matters at all levels of the spectrum, especially when it comes to community outreach. Marky?
All right, Alina Shirazi live in D.C. for us this morning. Thanks so much. Thank you for.
Let's pause here. Okay, so let's talk about something for a second. The gentleman there referred to it. I forget what he called it. I would have called it virtue signaling. That's what the Democratic Party has been doing in reference to African-American voters. There's been a lot of virtue signaling, right? Like they don't really plan to do anything for us. Meanwhile, they have planned to do things for other groups because other groups in this country have actually made concessions and gotten concessions for their votes. The African-American voters, we have not. But let me explain to you why these two groups are connected. There's one issue in particular, immigration. And I'm going to explain to you why. African-American voters, if you have been paying attention to what's happening in Chicago and also New York City, African-American voters have been very vocal that they are not happy that Democrat leaders in their particular cities are allowing migrants to come in and they're giving migrants more benefits than they've given to African Americans who grew up in those cities, who are legal citizens here. Don't believe me? I want to show you something that just happened in Chicago. Now, this is from Phil Scott. Let me make sure I got this right. Hold on. I want to make sure I got the right one because he's on multiple channels. Listen to Phil Scott. But this is on the African Diaspora News channel. So he's on that channel, but he also has his own channel. So I just want to make sure I got that correct. Listen to what he said just happened in Chicago. And then I think you'll understand at least why African-American voters might be a little pissed off. Listen to this.
Recently, Chicago has done something else. You know, the Democrat Party that a lot of black people in Chicago voted for, unfortunately, they are housing migrants in places to stay now, and they're paying their rent. Let's go ahead and roll that.
Welcome back. We are learning much more about the migrant crisis right here in Chicago. I spoke with Christina Passioni-Zayas, the city's first deputy chief of staff. She gave me insight on how the crisis is impacting the city and the state financially. Already this week, 41 buses have rolled into Chicago, and that means there are now 11,000 migrants living in shelters. 4,000 are still sleeping on police station floors and staying at the airport. Now, this is really startling. 30% of migrants here in Chicago are children. Majority of them are attending Chicago public schools. Right now, the state is footing the bill for what they call temporary housing, apartments and homes that are rented out for migrants. The state is paying on the high end $9,000 in rental assistance over a 6-month period of time.
$9,000 in rental assistance for migrants that have come into Chicago over 6 months. Now, here's the problem. When we look at the homelessness population in this country, African Americans are like 40% of the homelessness population, yet we're like 13% of the national population. There are Black homeless people in Chicago not being offered the same benefit. And it's not just Chicago. We're going to get into Thursday night. We're going to break down what's happening in California, what Gavin Newsom has decided to do. But they're giving housing to them, paying their rent. Now, I don't blame the migrants. I don't blame them. Some people do. I don't blame them. Because the reason why they're coming here in the first damn place is because of foreign policy decisions that have been made by our government. Because our government has destroyed these countries economically, whether it's been through sanctions, whether it's been through stealing their resources, imperialism, destroying these countries, overthrowing their leaders, their political leaders, interfering in their elections, leaving these countries in an economic despair. That's why the people are leaving, and that's why they are coming this way. So when we talk about the problems, it's important to call out the why. Why is it happening in the first place? And it's important to mention the solution. The solution is for the U.S. government to stop intervening in all of these countries, stop getting involved in their political elections, stop overthrowing their leaders, stop implementing sanctions on every country that disagrees with you on one little thing, or even if they don't disagree with you. Stop hurting and penalizing these countries economically, and this issue goes away. Now, this is not to say that people still won't want to come to the U.S. They will. Some people want to have the American dream. We have a process for that. But it has now gotten to the point where migrants that are coming into the country are being treated better than Black people in these cities that grew up there, and they're giving nothing at all. And we'll talk about it. We're going to go there. There has been nothing that this country has done economically to try to atone for slavery, Jim Crow, the crime bill, redlining, all of these things that were implemented to prevent passing down generational wealth or even accumulating generational wealth for most Black people in this country. And I don't want to hear, well, Oprah got there, so can you. Oprah sold out to a lot of people, okay? My grandma would say Oprah sold her soul. Oprah sold out to a lot of people to get to where she is. You don't get there just by being good at your job, because there's a lot of people that are good at their job that don't get a raise, that don't get promoted. It's all about whose ass you kiss and who you step on to get to the top, okay? And Oprah did that. So please stop using Oprah Winfrey as the example. Stop using athletes as an example. Not everyone knows how to be a LeBron James. Not everyone can be in the NBA. Most people won't join the NFL. These are just facts, not my opinion. But when it comes to other groups, time and time again, this country has shown us that they are willing to bend over backwards to help everybody but African Americans. Now, it was one thing if this was happening under a Republican administration, right? Because African Americans wouldn't expect that help. But this is happening under Joe Biden's presidency. The guy who said that he was going to forgive HBCU student loans didn't happen. The guy who said, if you vote for Warnock and Ossoff, we'll give you those $2,000 checks. Then had the audacity to shortchange the people. Couldn't even give the $2,000. The guy who co-wrote the crime bill turns around and gives the police more money. And so we have now reached a point in this country where more and more African Americans are calling out the pandering and the virtue signaling that has continued to come from the Democratic Party, and they don't want to deal with it anymore. Let's continue.
With that comes help moving in and a starter kit to furnish the apartment.
That rent lasts for 6 months, and ideally people would have started their legal process, secured legal work authorization, and then be able to sustain that apartment. And so the cost, or I guess the payment towards the landlord, is based on market rate. It's based on the configuration of the apartment, how many rooms, where it's located, all of those things. And so it kind of varies from place to place.
Now, to a lot of our brothers and sisters in Chicago who, you know, struggling right now, who maybe some of you struggling to pay rent, some of you probably could be even facing eviction. You know, they've been record evictions all over the country. Has the city of Chicago offered to pay $9,000 toward your rent for 6 months?
That is a good question that he's asking there. For those of you who are listening, has your city given you an apartment? Have they offered to pay thousands of dollars to help you have an apartment? Notice the woman said in the video, she said they're even helping them furnish the apartments. Anybody, did your city, your state help you furnish your apartment? Nobody helped me furnish an apartment. No one gave me an apartment. And every time I had to come up with 3 months rent. They don't have to do that. They're bypassing all the steps that all of us have to go through. Now, again, don't hate on them. It's not their fault. It's our country's fault. If we would have stayed out of their economic situation, stayed out of meddling in their country, this would not happen. So it's almost like the U.S. has a debt that was owed, but the U.S. also has a debt that was owed to us. And they have not tried to pay it.
I mean, seriously. I mean, a lot of you are taxpayers, and they're not. This is they say they get a starter kit. So basically, they're getting furnished. They're getting everything. Now they come over to this country. They didn't vote. No, the Democrats come to you and say, vote for us, vote, right? And then you come out and vote, and then you get nothing out the vote. It's not that voting don't work. It's just the people you're voting for is working against you.
Working against you. Think about that.
They don't prioritize you. Now, on a podcast, we covered that without the black vote, the Democrats would never win. They would never win an election if black people say, I'm not voting for you. Even if they had the white vote, the Hispanic vote, and Asian vote, they have shown they cannot win elections without the black vote. And I said in that podcast, that's where our power lies politically, is that we should collectively punish the Democrat Party for what they're doing. There's a lot of homeless people right now in Chicago. It is cold right now in Chicago. It's not snowing yet, but it's cold without looking at the weather reports over there. And you have, why isn't our homeless population being put up in apartments and homes and all of that? Why are they getting a starter pack? What about suffering people, low income people in Chicago who are citizens of the America and also residents of Chicago? Why aren't they getting that? Now,
pause for a second and let's think about something. Everyone needs to start asking these questions. Why is our government willing to help another group instead of helping us? Let's think about it. I didn't see our government do this for anybody else in this country. Anybody else that grew up in this country, I didn't see them do this. Now, why would they do this for the migrant? So people say, well, some of these cities, they declared themselves to be a sanctuary city. And so Governor Abbott has been busing migrants that come in through the border to these cities. Okay, you can have your beef with Governor Abbott. Again, take it back to the foreign policy decisions that this country has made. That being said, though, the question is, why hasn't it been done for citizens in this country? Because when we made the claim before during 2020, everybody should have housing in this country. We were called radical. We were called extremists. Oh, those crazy lefties, get out of here. But they have no problem giving housing to people who are not citizens of this country. And not even just that, but these are people that came over illegally. So they're willing to give housing to all of them, but they're not willing to give housing to all of you who grew up in this country or who are legal citizens of this country and pay taxes in this country, whether you like the left or not. Think about that. Now, why would they be willing to do that? Could have something to do with the labor force in this country, because they know, especially a lot of these companies, there's been a lot of strikes over the past year and a half. They know that they can pay them less and they'll do the work and they won't ask for the benefits that we're striking for. That could be the part of the problem. Either way, people need to speak up about it. Again, this is happening under Joe Biden's administration. Let's continue a little bit more here.
Now, see, black folks, I know you're suing out there in the South Shore region. You're suing to stop them from putting migrants in your area. I know they protested about putting migrants in the Munson Park field house, but y'all gonna have to start getting together and filing lawsuits to get these programs, because these programs are discriminatory in nature. And let me explain to you why it's discriminatory. If you're not going to pay everybody's rent, then you pay no rent. It's just that simple. You can't say we're going to pay rent for these people who aren't even taxpayers of the city of Chicago. They didn't vote for Brandon Johnson at all. So Brandon Johnson and the Democrats are prioritizing the migrants over the citizens of that city and the taxpayer.
And that's what you need to take home with you folks. This shouldn't even be, like, I want to be very clear. This shouldn't even be a left-right issue. This is a humanity issue. And you need to ask yourself, why do you continue to go out every election cycle and stand in line to vote for these politicians, and they don't do anything for you? Nothing for you. And I'm not telling you to go vote for the Republicans either. They ain't gonna do shit for you either. That's why I'm telling you to leave the freaking system. But the thing is, most African Americans in this country do not vote for the Republican Party. Most African Americans vote for the Democratic Party. And they have given us nothing. Nothing. And I said it earlier this morning. This country gave reparations to Japanese Americans that were part of the Japanese internment camps. They haven't given you anything. Not a dime. And that actually happened under Ronald Reagan. But you bring up that reparations should be given to American descendants of slavery, by the way, which is based on lineage. You got to clear this up, based on lineage, not race. You bring that up and you're told stop being divisive. Was it divisive when it was done for other groups? We got politicians out here giving $3.8 billion a year to Israel, but you can't ask them for reparations. Listen to some of the voters in Chicago at a meeting here. This is also from the African Diaspora Network. Listen to this. Black Chicago residents threaten to turn Illinois red. Listen to this. Because of this situation.
To be a freedom fighter, to always be on the right side of people. But one thing I have realized is that Jim Crow has messed us up so bad that we want funding and campaign donations, and once we get into office, we somehow forget where we come from. And I'm not talking about you, but I look at our other elected officials, how they allowed MMS to get a bruise at city council. And as I came in here, I wasn't going to say anything. But when I walked in here and I seen the city of Chicago ticketing all of the legal people in here to voice their concern about the illegal people. That's not right.
Who got ticketed?
No. The city of Chicago, when I walked in, the boo people and the ticket people out there writing up all the black people. So what I'm saying is,
we paid for all the parties.
Yeah, but well, fix it with the city. This is what I'm saying. This is what I'm saying, dear brother. I'm sick of it. And I'm sick of these Uncle Tom Negro elected officials that the only thing they figure CTU and the rest of these unions gonna keep them in office.
He called them Uncle Toms.
I'm the first person that stopped the bus of the illegal migrants in Wadsworth, and I won't be the last. So what I'm saying, dear brother, look, I'm uncensored. I'm uncensored. I have not took a grant nor a dollar, so they can't control me. I'm a free black man. So what I'm saying to you is, what are we going to do about reparations?
Thank you.
So you see what's happening? Again, these are questions. You can watch the entire video for this one. It is on the African Diaspora News Network. Black Chicago residents threaten to turn Illinois red over prioritizing migrants. And again, for me, I can't speak for everybody else, but for me, my problem is not with migrants who are coming here. My problem is with this country and the decisions that this government has made. The fact that they have overlooked other people in this country, particularly African Americans in this country. We've been overlooked time and time again, and still come out and loyally support the Democratic Party. And when I told you guys, after Bernie 2020, that was it for me. That was my last rodeo. I mean, that was my last rodeo. There is not one politician that can run through either one of these parties that is going to get me to change my mind and come out and support them, because both of those parties are corporate. You have to walk away from this system. But the problem is the media has a lot of people brainwashed. They got you out there thinking, oh no, but you sound like a Trump. You sound like a Republican. Oh no, but people might get Trump. What are you getting now? The point is, none of them are going to help you. And don't come to me and tell me you don't have another choice. You got other choices. There are multiple people that are running third party independent that are actually care about, advocated for, and have been activists in reference to African Americans in this country and reparations, that have actually fought for these types of things for a good part of their life. So stop coming to me telling me that this is all you got as a choice. It's not all you got as a choice. Stop letting mainstream media make you believe that lie. Now, Brandon Johnson, who's the mayor of Chicago, he was actually on Face the Nation about this issue earlier this week. Let's hear part of this.
For more on how immigration is affecting communities across the U.S., we turn now to two Democratic mayors, Chicago's Brandon Johnson and Denver's Mike Johnston. Gentlemen, welcome to Face the Nation.
Good morning. Thank you for having us.
Thanks for joining us. And Mr. Mayor of Chicago, I want to put to you, A question about what seems to have developed overnight. There are reports of a plane from Texas landing in Chicago carrying more migrants that arrived around 1 a.m. I'm wondering if Texas officials gave you any heads up. Who's on the plane? What happens next?
Well, what we have is clearly an international and federal crisis that local governments are being asked to subsidize. And this is unsustainable. None of our local economies are positioned to be able to carry on such a mission. And what we have attempted to do is to create structure and some coordination around this humanitarian crisis. And unfortunately, the governor of Texas, Governor Abbott, is determined to continue to sow seeds of chaos. And last night and several nights before, a number of buses continue to arrive in the city of Chicago and throughout the country without any coordination. And now he's taken on this very dangerous task of placing individuals on airplanes and flying them into our various cities.
So my question is, with this that is happening, with Governor Abbott sending migrants into what they would call the sanctuary cities, where is the president of the United States? You see, this is part of the reason why Joe Biden is losing support from African-American voters and Hispanic voters, because of this particular issue. There are other things too, don't get me wrong, unfulfilled campaign promises, but this issue has become a really hot button because, again, people are like, what the hell? You're doing all of this for them, but you haven't done anything for us, and we're from here. So this issue, Joe Biden is silent. All we've heard from Joe Biden is that he is building onto Trump's border wall, which, again, if you're a Democrat, you should look at that and raise eyebrows as well. Weren't you upset that Donald Trump was building the wall in the first damn place? Where's all those people who were crying and had tears in their eyes when they said the kids were in the cages when Trump was president? Kids are still in the cages. I don't see anybody crying now. Shouldn't you be upset for the hypocrisy that Joe Biden has in reference to this particular issue, that he's doing the same thing? Where is the president on this issue? He assigned the border to Kamala Harris. Where has Kamala Harris been on this particular issue? Why haven't they figured out a solution to this problem? You know why? Because then they have to address, why are they coming here in the first place? And then they have to go through the facts, which is the fact that the U.S. government destroyed these countries. That's why. Now we're going to go on a little bit more here, and then I want to show you something else in reference to 2024 election.
It's certainly a matter of not just of our national security, but it's the type of chaos that this governor is committed to administering.
Mr. Mayor of Denver, to be clear here, I know that you have looked at New York and Chicago making decisions to restrict bus arrivals. Are you trying to take measures in your city to restrict them from even arriving in the first place?
No, all we want is a system that is humanitarian for both the new folks that are arriving and for our cities and our city employees. And so we understand there will be an inflow. We have already had 35,000 migrants arrive to Denver. We've successfully helped them integrate into the country here. What we don't want is people arriving at 2 o'clock in the morning at a city and county building with women and children outside in 10-degree weather and no support. And so we want buses here to do what every other bus does, which is land at a bus station and a bus stop and hours when we can have staff there to receive them and to direct them towards services. And so we understand the flow is coming. We just want it to be coordinated and in a humanitarian way, which we think makes it effective for the city and for those.
Where's the president? 35,000 people have come in. 35,000. So this is the big pet peeve with some of the Black and Hispanic voters. This is part of the reason why some of them are very upset with Joe Biden. Now, I want to show you what it looks like going forward, the 2024 election. Of course, MSNBC has their dude in the khaki pants, Steve. He's going to go ahead and give a rundown of that. But I want to be very clear about this because some people, they don't like to talk about this issue. And again, I'm saying again, do not blame the migrants. This really is not on them. They're trying to get away from the turmoil in their countries that was caused by the U.S. government. But the U.S. government is going to have to deal with this because this is crazy. Going into 2024, what does it look like for Joe Biden?
Let's turn now to NBC's Steve Kornacki. As promised, he's over at the big board for a breakdown of what we can expect in next year's presidential election.
All right, well, we are approaching once every 4 years, the big one, the presidential election year 2024, almost upon us. So let's take a look here at how politics have kind of, and how the election of 2024 has kind of taken shape in 23 and the big questions we're looking at as 2024 kicks off. So first of all, who's going to be the Republican nominee, presumably against Joe Biden? At the start of 2023, this seemed like a very up in the air question. You can see the trend line for the candidates. And remember, at the start of 23, Republicans were coming off a pretty rough midterm. Candidates who'd been closely aligned with Donald Trump had lost key races in 2022. At the start of 23, Ron DeSantis was running pretty close in the poll average to Donald Trump. And then look what happened. It just exploded here for Trump and went the other way for DeSantis. What happened right around here in the calendar? That was when the first indictment of Trump came down, the one from the Manhattan district attorney. It almost seems to have triggered a rally around Trump effect among Republicans. And that's just held all year through all the legal drama and everything else that's happened. And here we are at the end of the year. And in the average, Trump just, open lengths ahead of Ron DeSantis, Nikki Haley, and Ramaswamy, and Christie, too, for that matter. So we'll see in the early contests if any of those candidates are going to have a shot here to beat Trump. They're probably going to have to make some noise, whether it's DeSantis in Iowa. He seems to really be trying to plant his flag there. Haley in New Hampshire. She's gotten some encouraging polling news there. Can one of them beat Trump in one of these early states? Of course, Haley's South Carolina will play a key role among the early states as well. Can one of them beat Trump in the early states and make this a race? That is what we're going to find out in the first 6 weeks or so of 2024. But how about the Democratic end of things? Joe Biden seems poised to be the Democratic nominee. What kind of year has he had politically? Well, again, he started 2023 coming off those good midterms for Democrats, and his approval rating, 46-50, wasn't that bad, but it's taken a hit this year. And as we start to close out the year, our final NBC poll had him at just 40% approval, 57% disapproval. How does this compare to past presidents entering their re-election year? Here you can see it. Here's the 40 that we have Biden at right now. These are all the final polls heading into the election year, re-election year that NBC conducted. You just see all the recent presidents. Look, Trump got beat in 2020. He was at 44 heading into his re-election year. Bush Sr. got beat in 92. He was at 52 and heading south rapidly.
Pause. Everyone, look at these numbers. These were the polls of presidential approval ratings before re-election. George H.W. Bush had 52% and he lost to Bill Clinton. He had 52%. Bill Clinton had 51%. He won. George W. Bush had 51%. He won. Barack Obama had 46%. He won. Donald Trump had 44%. He lost. And Joe Biden has 40%. Joe Biden has the lowest approval rating of all of these presidents, going all the way back to the 90s. This is insane. So for people who tell us like, oh, you guys are just being harsh on Biden, he's actually done a great job. Really? Look at the comparison to all the other presidents. How you get low? What? How does he get lower than Donald Trump? Lower than Donald Trump.
There, but you see how that number compares. That's the lowest. That's the lowest in an NBC poll for an incumbent facing a re-election here. But it is a tight race when you poll Biden versus Trump. At the start of the year, in the average of the polls nationally, Biden had a 2-point advantage. Now, at the end of the year, it is Trump who, on average, has a 2-point advantage here. It's a very, very close race, obviously. And what are the concerns of voters? The dynamics we'll be talking about if this race does materialize. Joe Biden, of course, is the oldest president ever at this this point, and his his fitness, his age, about 3 in 4 voters in our poll say it's a major or moderate concern. Big thing in 24 is going to be Trump's legal situation. Are there convictions? What goes on in the courtroom for him? 62% right now say that's a major or moderate concern for them. Would that number change if there's a conviction? Would that number change based on how these cases start to sort out? Big question, obviously, we'll be following well into 2024. And this is interesting, too.
Let me show you what he did. He skipped over that bottom part. So let me go back and read it. OK, they probably told him not to talk about this one. But this part here, Biden's awareness or involvement in Hunter's business dealing, that was at 60%, things that people are concerned about. Notice he didn't say that one. OK, he also skipped over Trump's age and fitness because he doesn't want to show you. Hold on. I'm trying to show the number. He doesn't want to show you that Trump's age and fitness was 47% of people concerned compared to Joe Biden's 74%. So you guys see the way that mainstream media, how they try to create the narrative. Notice how they skip over certain things, but that's okay. We got eyes on here, boo. So pay attention to those things. And I would also say, in reference to age, and notice they added fitness in there, in reference to age and fitness, what it's really about is obviously, particularly with Joe Biden, people are concerned about his cognitive decline, which is very apparent. If you've seen him in interviews, if you've seen him at press conferences, we've been paying attention to this. So that is very apparent and people are aware of that, but they don't want to use those words that I just used. They want to say age and fitness. Interesting.
How these cases start to sort out. Big question, obviously, we'll be following well into 2024. And this is interesting, too. Just there is clearly what this ballot question is showing you here is matching Trump against just a generic Democrat. Trump loses sizably. Matching Biden against a generic Republican. Biden loses by double digits. It's just showing you broadly there's not a big appetite for Trump versus Biden, even though it seems that each party, at least as we enter 2024, is poised to go in that direction. And that leads to this final graphic here, a poll from the Wall Street Journal recently. They included a bunch of third-party options, and against Biden and Trump, they added up to 17%. That's a big question heading into 2024. Is there going to be a...
Look at this. Notice that they have to mention the third-party candidates. See, this is what I was telling you. If you had people run third-party or independent that are actually well-known, have a big name, they're going to have to mention them. So they have to mention Kennedy or Manchin. Joe Manchin is not declared, by the way. West or Stein or Mapsteed is, I believe, Libertarian Party. So that's that 17% right there. So you see, they have to talk about them. They have to give them press if it's someone that's running through third-party independent that is a well-known entity. So they're scared. They're scared. That's why, Steve, he skipped over that third option and he skipped over that fourth option. But ladies and gentlemen, if you want to know why, again, why Joe Biden has lost Black voters and Hispanic voters, again, point to the immigration issue. That is a big part of the problem, along with some of his campaign promises. But what we've been hearing from people, particularly in cities like Chicago and New York, and now you just heard the mayor of Denver, Colorado as well, immigration seems to be one of the biggest problems. Let's go to some of the comments here. Drew, the Hispanics I know tend to hate illegal immigration because they know how difficult it is to come here legally. Yeah, same here. I know, like, people that I've spoken to, people that I know that I've been friends with for a long time, they've explained to me like how the process works and how long it took. Thank you for the super chat, Cool Blue. Perhaps Biden can continue losing even more party coalition support so he can hand Trump 40 states in November. This hasn't happened since the 1980s. Whew. Thank you, Justin. Sabby, absolutely right on the migrant issue. Excellent show as always. You're on fire. Thank you so much. And thank you, Janine. Biden wants these people to come here to be the new labor force in this country and keep Black folks down. He's on tape saying, bring them in. Thank you, NK. Joe, if you don't gotta from me, I think you mean vote. If you don't vote for me, you ain't Black, Biden. He said that. Thank you, David. This is how the Dublin riot started. My Irish family talked about this for ages. Now we see it here. And it's to maintain cheap labor. Hashtag globalization. JB says it's a system of division. Divide the workers. Make it migrants versus citizens. This is part of how the rich will keep us separated. Favor one over the other. Just like how colonizers divided tribes in Africa. Bingo. Thank you, Eric. Phil Scott needs to interview Stephanie Kelton or Steve Grumbine about MMT for the benefit of all of us as FBAs. And we've had some of the MMT people on. Rote says, if you think they're giving African-American reparations, I want what you're smoking. I don't think they are, but we should demand it. It should happen. Thank you, Meteor Dreams. Sabby, you are 100% right. It's an invasion. I wouldn't call it an invasion, and I didn't use that word. But what I am saying is that this has been brought on by the actions of the U.S. government in those countries. Thank you, Eric. Given all the nonsense that we deal with in America as Black people, you would think that more of us would be anti-capitalist. Bingo. Bingo. And thank you, Cool Blue. Some sources have Biden approval between 34% and 39%. Yes. I'll take the comment on Rockfin, Eric. Thank you for the tip on Rockfin, Chris. Sabby, also, many of these Venezuelans are being used as scabs here in LA during the hotel workers strike, and that is so very unfair. When I super chatted the Convo Couch about this, they ignored my chat, which made me upset because now I see that they have an agenda they always cover for South Americans. Oh, wow. I didn't know about that. Maybe they just missed it. I don't know. Thank you for the tip, Eli or Ellie. You're spot on, Sabby, about all of us being played by the ruling class and many divisive issues, including immigration. I am a GED and ESL instructor in Chicago, and nearly all of my students and many of my friends fall in these two categories. We in the working class are all noticing it because manipulation is getting more and more blatant. The migrants often have horrible stories too. Yep. That's right.